we're going to be delving into the 1990 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. The movie is, in my opinion, and I suspect in most people's opinions, the best version of any live-action portrayal of the Turtles to date. This movie, to me, is just perfect. It actually takes a lot from Peter and Kevin's original comic books, which is what I believe is a reason for its success. The dark, gritty tone of the comics can be seen in every scene in this movie. And it's very earnest and it feels so real. Well, you know, with the exception of 4 mutated Ninja Turtles and 1 mutated rat, it's as real as it's ever going to get. Saying that, I remember seeing this as a child and being so excited to see this. I think it may have been the first time I'd ever seen a movie at the cinema. And I remember absolutely loving this movie. And it soon became one of my favourite movies. And I can say that my VHS tape got a bit worn out over the years. I also remember being a little bit disappointed because you see the only exposure I ever had of the Ninja Turtles was the 1987 cartoon, and at the time I had no idea that this was a violent adult comic book before it was ever turned into this child-friendly cartoon. So of course, on first viewing of the movie I was thinking many things. Where is Bebop and Rocksteady? Where is Krang and the Technodrome and Dimension X? Where's the Turtle Wagon and the Blimp? Why is April wearing a yellow jumpsuit? And so on and so on. These were all elements of the 1987 cartoon that I really wanted to be in the 1990 movie, which weren't. But of course at the time, like I said, I didn't know about the comic book. So looking upon this with adult eyes now, I can really appreciate this movie a lot more than I could as a child. And it was made on a very modest budget of 13 million and it made over 201 million worldwide. And in my opinion, when you compare it to some of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies we've had recently, and I'm talking mainly about the Michael Bay movies, there's just no comparison that this is the better version. Well, at least in my eyes. I don't know what you think, but in my eyes, this is the superior movie, the best movie that we ever got of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But before filming actually started, not a lot of people believed that this movie would be successful. And this was down to the failure of a movie that had been released not long before. And this movie also had its own animated series and its own toy line, which was very successful. And this movie was The Masters of the Universe, and it bombed at the cinema hard and it was a complete failure. But looking back at this movie, which I actually liked as a child, like most people back then, I was a massive He-Man fan. But one thing that this movie did not do, it didn't stick to the source material. And it just ruined the movie, having them fight the battles on Earth instead of having them fight in the fictional land of Eternia like they always did in the cartoon. But you know, all that is for another episode. I'd love to revisit He-Man in a later episode, but for now let's just get back to the Turtles. So as I said, because the Master of the Universe was a complete failure, not a lot of people had faith in a live action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. Now, trying to get this movie signed up with a studio proved quite difficult. Once again, just like with the toy line, people initially thought this was a crazy idea and it just wouldn't work. Now, it's one thing to have the Ninja Turtles in an animated series where it can totally work, where imaginations can run wild, but to bring the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to a live action movie, not a lot of people were just buying into that. That is until the people at Golden Harvest Studios decided to take a chance on the Ninja Turtles, but not without caution from the studio. They were still doubtful, but nevertheless the movie was given a budget of 3 million, a very low budget due to the head of production at Golden Harvest believing the movie could be made for peanuts. The next step was to get the creators Peter and Kevin to agree to the movie, and after a few disagreements from Peter and Kevin, who always had final say over their creation, the film was given the okay, and then director Steve Barron was brought in to direct the movie. Now, Steve Barron at the time had only worked on music videos. He'd actually directed Michael Jackson's Billie Jean music video. And Steve was chosen because of his visual style that he brought to his music videos. They believed that he could bring some of that style to the Ninja Turtles movie. And it wasn't long before Steve had a vision in his mind and how he wanted the movie to look and how he wanted the movie to feel. And he took a lot of elements from Tim Burton's 1989 Batman movie, which had just changed the way comic book movies would be viewed forever. But Steve also had his own vision in mind, what he wanted this movie to be. He wanted there to be a very real vibe to it. Make no mistake, his vision was set in the real world, and the Turtles were dropped right into it. But he was also aware of the animated show. so fun and humour was essential. What Steve did was take issues 1 to 10 of the original comic book run and pulled from them scenes that he wanted in his movie, like the fight at the antique shop, the retreat to April's countryside farmhouse, and the rooftop fight scene with Raphael and the Foot, although in the comic books it was originally Leonardo who fought the Foot alone, and that was changed slightly because it was thought that it suited Raphael's personality a little bit more for this movie. And Steve did all this with the help of the screenwriter Todd Langdon, who used the comics to rewrite the original scripts. Now, even the original story was taken from the books, although there were small changes, but nowhere near as much as the animated show. For instance, in the movie, Splinter started out as a pet rat. His owner was Yoshi, and Yoshi was in love with Tang Shen, just like in the comic book. Now, when it comes to the Shredder and Oroku Nagi, in the movie there is no Oroku Nagi. The Shredder's older brother doesn't exist in this. What they've kind of done is took the two characters and merged them into one. The Shredder is the one who kills Tang Shen and Yoshi, like in the comics, and Splinter is once again set free from his cage and then jumps to Shredder's face, gnawing at him, and Shredder slices off Splinter's ear and leaves. New York is having a major crime wave, and April O'Neil is making waves whilst reporting on the matter. After leaving work one night wearing a yellow coat, which is probably paying tribute to the cartoon version of April, who wears a yellow jumpsuit, she is attacked by a group of thugs. The turtles appear, and Raphael smashes the streetlight with his sai, and the turtles defeat the thugs in the darkness, and then flee back down the sewer. Problem is, Raph forgot his sai. Next we see the turtles in the sewers celebrating their first battle, but Raphael is in a major mood because he lost his weapon. We meet Splinter, and the puppet for Splinter is absolutely fantastic. There's a trilogy of these movies, and it's the best version you're going to get in this first movie. As with the turtle suits, they get worse as the films progress. Splinter realises that Raphael is in the mood, and he tells Raphael to just forget about the weapon, but he can't. The turtles continue to celebrate, and Raph goes to watch a movie. After the movie, he witnesses a purse snatching. He trips one of the two thugs, retrieves the purse, and gives it back to the woman. The mugger runs into a near park area, and that is where we meet Casey Jones, who intends to beat the thugs for their bad deeds. Raphael intervenes and the thugs run away. Raph and Casey start to fight. Casey eventually hits Raph with a cricket bat, sending him flying through the air and into a trash can, and Casey runs away. Raphael gives chase but fails to catch him. The next day, April is reporting on the crime wave. Shredder sees the report on the TV and orders some of the Foot Clan to silence her. She is confronted by the Foot Clan in a quiet subway station and knocked unconscious. Luckily for her, Raphael has been following her so he can retrieve his sai. Raphael beats the Foot Clan and grabs April and takes her to the secret lair, unknown to him that he's been followed by a lone Foot Clan member. So after April comes round from being unconscious, we then get the origin story again of Splinter, which we have just discussed. After Splinter has finished telling April the origin story, they return to April's apartment for pizza. Later that night, they discover that Splinter has been taken and their home has been ransacked. They return to April's apartment until they can come up with a plan. April's boss comes to her apartment with his son Danny, who spots one of the turtles momentarily in April's flat and tells the Shredder where the turtles are hiding. Back at April's apartment above the antique shop, Raphael and Leo have a falling out, and Raph goes to the roof to be alone and cool off. A few blocks away, Casey Jones just so happens to be sitting on a rooftop and spots Raphael and the Foot Clan who are sneaking up on him. Raph is attacked and outnumbered on the rooftop by the members of the Foot Clan, and they beat him unconscious and throw him through the skylight. The other turtles run into his aid, and the Foot Clan all crash into April's apartment. A fight breaks out, and everyone falls through the floor into the antique store. Casey Jones arrives just as the fight is looking a bit grim and joins in. The shop catches fire during the fight, and the turtles, Casey and April, flee to the country to an old farmhouse that April owns. Raphael is unconscious for a good while, then makes a recovery. They hide out there at the farmhouse for a good while until they learn their last bit of training, when they all meditate and contact Splinter mystically. The turtles decide that they are ready to return to New York City and confront the Foot. When they return to the old lair, they discover April's boss's son Danny hiding. When the turtles fall asleep, Danny returns back to the Foot's hideout to try and save Splinter. Shredder confronts Danny and finds out the turtles are back. Luckily, Casey Jones followed Danny to the hideout and helps him free Splinter, and after a fight between Casey and Shredder's second in command, they leave to return to the turtles. Meanwhile, the Foot Clan have attacked the turtle lair, and a huge fight has begun between the turtles and the Foot that starts in the sewers and then progresses to street level. and eventually the fight ends up on a rooftop where they make quick work of the last few Foot members. But then the Shredder arrives on the rooftop and a battle between Shredder and the Turtles breaks out. The Turtles quickly realise that they are no match for Shredder, and eventually he gets the better of all of them, especially Leonardo, who he pins to the floor with a spear next to his throat. After he makes Raphael, Donatello and Michelangelo throw away their weapons, and before he can kill Leo, Splinter arrives and lets Shredder know who he is and that he was the one who scarred Shredder's face as a pet rat. Shredder removes his mask, revealing the scars, and then Shredder charges at Splinter with the spear, but Splinter uses Mikey's nunchucks on Shredder's spear and flips Shredder over the side of the building and holds him there. Shredder grabs a dagger and throws it at Splinter, who catches it, but lets Shredder go and he falls to the garbage wagon below. And Casey Jones flips a switch that compacts the garbage and crushes the Shredder, and it would seem that Casey Jones is a stone cold killer in this, a stone cold murderer. All pretty serious stuff for a kid's film, wouldn't you say? And then the movie ends with the Turtles celebrating with Splinter on the rooftops, and as they all shout cowabunga and high five, the credits roll to the Partners in Crime single, which was made especially for the movie. And before we move on, while we're mentioning the TURTLE Power song from Partners in Crime, I just want to say that when this song came out in the 1990s, I absolutely loved it and I could not get enough of it, even though they said that Raphael was the leader in the lyrics, which absolutely drove me mad at the time. I was like, no, it's Leonardo, it's not Raphael. But I absolutely loved that song. So, in the 1990 movie, they followed the grim story of the comic, and as a kid, I hated how Splinter was a rat to begin with, and as I've mentioned this before, I found it hard to accept that he learned ninjutsu as a pet rat. Even as a kid, I found this hard to accept, but now I can overlook it because this film is it's brilliant. And so the next step in trying to get this movie off the ground was to get someone to do all the animatronics. Now, Steve had worked previously for Jim Henson, who was the creator of the Muppets and the movie Labyrinth, as well as other things like Sesame Street. Initially, Jim Henson didn't want anything to do with the movie, not because he found it ridiculous, but because of the comic's violence and the adult theme. Steve managed to convince Jim to make the Turtles for him after promising that the film was going to be made with care and taste and will not tarnish Jim's legacy. And so work went ahead to create a new kind of puppet, possibly the most advanced puppets to ever grace a screen at that time. And of course, now with Jim Henson on board, the budget was going to have to be considerably higher. $3 million just wasn't going to cut it. And they actually achieved a higher budget by going to different distributors such as Virgin and New Line Cinema. And they also made a deal with Domino's Pizza. As the Ninja Turtles love eating pizza, it was a great idea to get the product placement in there as well. And eventually the film was up and running and 2 sets of turtle costumes were made. The first set had all the wires and electronics fitted within the suits, mainly in the shells, and these controlled all the facial expressions on the heads. The second costumes were free of wires and electronics and allowed the actors inside to do all the stunt work and the martial arts that was required for the fight scenes. And next there was the casting process to actually put people in these costumes. As I was researching this film, I found that a few of these actors who interviewed for the part and got the part actually had some interesting stories about what actually went on in the interview. Michelin Sisti was in the Michelangelo suit. In his audition, he did a roundhouse kick to impress the director and put his foot through the wall. He thought he had blown his chances until Steve broke out in laughter, telling him anyone who put that much effort into the audition deserves to be in my movie, which I think is a great story. And then Robbie Rist was cast as the voice of Mikey, so the guy inside the suit was just doing the martial arts and the stunts, but Robbie Rist was the actual voice actor who voiced Michelangelo. Now, the actor in the Raphael suit also had an interesting story to tell. Mr. Josh Pice, he remembered the intense body cast experience when they had to cast a suit around his body. They actually gave him 2 straws to breathe through by poking the straws up his nose as he was completely covered in the plaster. And he was actually told later that they kept him in the plaster longer than needed just to see if he would freak out or not. And it's worth noting that Josh also voiced Raphael. And then we have the actor who was in the Donatello suit, Leif Tilden. Now, he recalls being in the audition, sitting in an office surrounded by movie props. He recalls seeing Falco's head from the Neverending Story in one corner and a Yoda puppet in the other. And he absolutely loved it, and it's one of his fondest memories from any audition he's ever done. And the actor who played Leonardo, David Foreman, he didn't really have an interesting interview story, but it is worth noting that he actually played a thug in the movie, as well as a Ninja Turtle. In fact, all the Turtle actors had cameos. The guy who played Mikey played the pizza delivery guy at the beginning of the film. Donatello actor played a foot member. And the actor who played Raphael was the passenger in the taxi seen after Raphael and Casey Jones have the fight in the park. Leonardo was voiced by Brian Tukey. I think that's how you pronounce that name. And then we get to the Splinter puppet that was operated by Kevin Clash. It was an advanced hand puppet, and Kevin wasn't actually in the suit, he was more or less underneath it, away from the camera, and Kevin also voiced Splinter. The actors had a hard time in these costumes. It did get very hot and claustrophobic with all the electronics in the suits, and on occasion the heads would have to be torn off to cool the actors down and let them breathe and drink fluids. Occasionally sickness was unavoidable. The heads would be glued on to seem seamless, and sometimes they would malfunction and the actors would be trapped inside for sometimes hours, and on occasion they would absolutely freak out and shout for the crew members to just come and rip the heads off. Now the actor who played Raphael commented how everything that could possibly go wrong with the suits went wrong. He also said that the suit helped him play the character of Raphael better, who was a very frustrated and angry violent turtle, and the actor actually said that the suit made him feel exactly the same way. And of course we also had the following actors playing these parts. April O'Neil was played by Judith Hogue, Casey Jones played by Elias Cortez, and Shredder played by James Saito. And Sam Rockwell also appeared in the movie in a very small role as a Foot Clan thug. Just a little bit of trivia there for you. And of course Sam Rockwell went on to much bigger things in his film career. He's, as you know, he's in a lot of good movies these days. It is also worth mentioning that Jim Henson, he was around on occasion but not constantly, and sadly Jim Henson passed away shortly before the film was released. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie was Jim Henson's last project. The movie's shooting locations and set designs were all throwbacks to that original comic book, and some set pieces of streets and rooftop scenes looked almost identical to the pages from the comic book, and especially the sewer layer the turtles lived in looked a dirty, disgusting place to live, as it would do after all if it was a real sewer. The film needed to be sped up in certain scenes involving the turtles to make the movements look a little bit more fluid and convincing, especially the fight scenes, because as you can imagine, for these actors in these suits doing these stunts, the movements were probably slowed down considerably because of the sheer weight and clumsiness of the suits, so probably speeding the camera up just helped it look that little bit more natural. And of course the tone of the film was very dark, and the actual sets were shot in the shadows, in dark surroundings, which actually did the film wonders. Now the film needed to be heavily edited for its UK release, once again just like the cartoons, and once again it was down to Mikey's weapon of choice, the nunchucks. Like I said, when I was a kid, my VHS was worn out, but little did I know that I was watching an edited version with parts missing. It was only when I purchased the DVD in later years did I see the film in its full glory. But it wasn't only Michelangelo scenes that were dropped from the movie. Let me just talk you through a few of the scenes that were cut initially from the UK release. Now, you remember the scene after Raphael gets beat up on the rooftop and he's thrown through the skylight, and then all the Foot Clan members come down after him, and then Michelangelo and one of the other Foot members start having a nunchuck competition on who's more skilled. And you know, they're all spinning the nunchucks around, then Michelangelo spins his nunchucks around, and it ends with him spinning it round on his finger and he wins the competition. That bit was completely cut out of my version of the VHS tape, so it was quite nice to actually see that in the DVD release. It's a really good scene. The bit where Splinter throws Shredder over the rooftop, then momentarily holds him before Shredder throws his dagger at Splinter and forced to drop him. Well, that scene was cut out of my VHS tape as well. What you actually saw was Shredder running at Splinter, and then Splinter wraps the... Well, actually, you didn't even see the nunchuck. You just kind of see this quick movement, and then you see Shredder flip over the building, and then you just see him straight away just drop. You don't see Splinter holding him and doing his little speech. You just see Shredder just drop straight away down to the garbage truck. There's a scene where the Foot are trying to hack away at Michelangelo with the axes, and Michelangelo's just spinning around on his back, and he comments on the Wheel of Fortune joke. That bit wasn't in my VHS copy either in the UK. That was very annoying, not that I knew about it at the time. And then there's the bit in the farmhouse where Michelangelo comes in from training, and I think a lot of those training clips were also missing from my VHS release, because obviously they were using some of the weapons that weren't allowed to be shown on screen. And there's also a scene where Michelangelo comes into the farmhouse after training, and he's got sore muscles, and he grabs the turtle wax out of the cupboard, and it's quite a funny scene, but I don't remember that being in the VHS copy when I was a kid either. And I believe, I may be mistaken, but I believe that the German release had the same edited version as the UK release as well. But saying all that, strangely enough, the title of the movie kept the word ninja in it, unlike the cartoon. Unlike Masters of the Universe, the Ninja Turtles movie was a massive success, and as I said, it made a massive 201 million worldwide, and I'm sure you agree that that is not a bad profit at all for a movie that was made with only a $13 million budget. Now, as good as this movie was, there are a few goofs and a few movie mistakes. There were a few times in the movie where the actors in the suits can actually be seen. One particular goof happens in the scene where Leo and Raphael are sharing a hug after Raphael has been beaten up on the rooftop and they've escaped to the farmhouse, and he finally wakes up from his coma. You remember the scene where they're sharing the hug? Well, Donatello comes in and starts poking fun, and he starts laughing and tilting his head back, and as he does so, you can actually see straight down the turtle's mouth, and you can see the actual actor's mouth inside the actual turtle head, and it looks quite disturbing to see two sets of teeth, the turtle's teeth and the actor's teeth, coming out of the head. And there's also the scene where the turtles are leaving April's apartment for the first time, and it can clearly be seen that Leonardo's swords are made from rubber props as they get caught on the wall and bend quite easily. Also, the scene where Raphael gets thrown through the skylight and crashes down in the apartment below. When the turtles go to check on him, you can see that the shell is clearly made of a sponge-like material. The best mistake is seen when Leo and Raph are arguing in April's apartment, and as the camera moves back, you can see a member of the crew in the background trying to stay out of shot but failing miserably. He was probably controlling the puppetry, but I don't know how this was missed, because he can clearly just be seen in the background. It's just a guy in a red cap just knelt down in the background of the movie. He has no right whatsoever to be in that scene, but there he is. Always notice him on that scene. I can't not notice that. Even with all these mistakes, the movie is still brilliant. There's no denying that. It is the best version, in my opinion, of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles we have ever had.